everyone. Just before this episode gets started, I just want to say, even though I do say it in this episode, that I am not a medical professional and do not have any qualifications. The things that I talk about here is just my own experience and the things that I have experienced in my 15 years from age 15 to age 30 of being on birth control, or 15 to 29. And I got off in January, and so it's now October. This has been my 10-month experience, 9-month experience. Yeah, and I tried taking some video episodes before, but it never really worked out, and I was kind of nervous about this one just because who likes to listen to themselves or watch themselves? I don't know why I do this. I enjoy doing this, but I hate watching back. I don't watch any full episodes. I don't listen to any full episodes. I hate it. But I would like to think that what I'm talking about is maybe helpful to some people or entertaining at least. So I rambled a lot through this whole episode, and there were some things that I forgot to say that I wanted to mention. So there's going to be some little speech bubbles, hopefully, throughout this whole episode, of just things that I forgot or things that I want to add. But yeah, thanks for being back here with me. And if you have any episode ideas or questions, feedback, anything, let me know. Hi everyone, welcome back to Newfound Happy Hour. If you have not watched this before, my name is Sarah, and this started as a podcast where we basically just talk to cool people doing cool things here in Newfoundland. I have met so many people through my jobs and social life and school, and everyone has their own unique experiences, and I just thought that there should be a way to share that from real people and not just influencers or celebrities that we see all the time on the internet. So that's how I started this. As time went on, though, I decided that for this season of the podcast, I would make it a bit more broad. Obviously, my opinions coming from me are as a 30-year-old millennial woman living here in Newfoundland. But instead of kind of keeping it to just Newfoundland, I want to talk to people from everywhere. And the intention is more so not just to highlight each other and our experiences, but kind of give best friend advice and big sister energy. I don't have any sisters, or I didn't growing up. And there's a lot of times that I wish I had have had that person to give me advice and or guidance even. So that is what I'm attempting to do here. And I had to write down all of my thoughts because this episode is something that I wanted to do for a while, but I wanted to wait until I had enough experience on the topic to actually talk about it. So I'll backtrack a little bit. Season 1 was in 2022. That's when I started this podcast. Season 2 was 2023. And then this is season 3 in 2024, which is really weird. It feels like I've only been doing this a few months. But there's over 25 episodes now, which is crazy to think about. And I took a break over the summer because I was traveling a lot. I thought I was going to find the time to do this, but I didn't. I was home here and there, and I was just way too busy. So I was going to do a little recap of everything I did this summer because I did travel a lot, and I feel like I probably have some good advice when it comes to traveling. I've done a few episodes on that before if you want to go back and listen, specifically solo traveling. But as for traveling a lot in a short amount of time, that was new for me. So anyway, I was busy. I just wanted to edit this part in here because I didn't really talk about the previous episodes of this podcast if you haven't watched before. So this is season 3. There's a bunch of episodes from earlier this year. So I would say the first half of season 3. And basically it's all part of a Mother's Day series that I did. So talking to a few of my friends who are in the early stages of motherhood, some with newborns, some with 2 children, everything in between. So I think each episode has a part 1 and a part 2. I would recommend checking those out. We do talk about, different birth stories, and I think that's all related to this as well. So yeah, definitely go check those out and check out all the other episodes. There's at least 25 of all different topics, a lot of cool people doing cool things. So check those out as well. So yeah, the main topic of this episode is just to discuss coming off of birth control. It's something that I was on for 15 years, which makes no sense because I'm a young 20-year-old. However, that is my reality. And before I get into anything, I will say I have zero medical qualifications or background. I have a lot of friends who are nurses and family, and I do know some doctors and people who work in the medical field. Everything that I say on this episode is based on my own research and what worked for me. Everybody is different. I think that's the important thing too, is we always tend to generalize what will happen in these situations, but everybody is so different. And I really learned that when I asked people their opinions on, or not even their opinions, just their experiences coming off of birth control or what questions they had. A lot of people have very different experiences. There's some similarities in a lot of people as well. So it's really just a toss-up of how your experience is going to go with this. But I do wish that I had someone explain this to me at any point over the last 15 years that I was on birth control. So yeah, I do have a lot of notes here to talk about because it's been a journey. So unfortunately, the medical system here is not always great. I've seen a few people on TikTok talk about how they've had to document their own symptoms and experience and kind of do their own research and then bring it to a doctor, which I think you might have to do here. I won't go into my own health history, but I have had situations where you're kind of dismissed about certain things. And if you don't really have an answer for what's happening to you or what you think is happening, they'll make a guess or they'll say, come back however long and we'll retest. So that can be a little bit annoying. And in this province specifically, this is where I will relate it back to Newfoundland. We've had people who will go try and get testing for certain symptoms, and it turns out they have breast cancer and it wasn't even looked at or it wasn't taken seriously, and then it's too far progressed. So obviously with your health, it's very important to do your own research and kind of advocate for yourself. And that is what I'm trying to do here, is just document my own experience, and maybe it will help someone else. I know that a lot of people who make TikToks about this sort of thing was very helpful for me. Even if they might be wrong in some cases, at least I could still look up what they were saying and see if it applied to me, or if it made sense for me. And oh my goodness, there's so much. So yeah, that is all I'm trying to do here. I just turned 30, which I feel like I need to do an episode on that alone to process it. I don't know if I fully have yet, but there's so much that I wish was common knowledge, or that I wish that I knew at like 20 or even 25 years old. So hopefully everything I'm about to say is a little bit informative. Even if you are a man or someone that this might not relate to, I think it's still really informative because it's a lot about how the reproductive system works and a lot of things that people don't know, even at 30 years old. So I asked on my podcast Instagram the experiences people had and just coming off of birth control in general. I had one person say they felt no difference at all. I know a few people who got back on birth control because the effects were so bad, so they got back on it to try and reverse that. I'm not sure everyone's case, but I've had a few friends who have really bad acne. I'll talk about my experience with that. Most people say it subsides, but then some people say that they didn't have any symptoms with acne for like a year after getting off birth control, and then it got really bad after a year. So when I said people have different experiences, that is the case. Most people say that the mental clarity and better mental health in general is worth all the other symptoms. And for the most part, all the people I know are generally happier and healthier. So that's definitely a plus. A higher sex drive, less numb to emotions. And I relate to all that. I'm feeling a lot better in all those ways. Someone asked if others found if their cervix was healing, and I'm not 100% sure the context of that, but I will say that the NuvaRing, which is what I was on for the majority of those 15 years, can irritate your cervix. My doctor always mentioned that can happen with the ring and IUDs. So if that's what you're referring to, I can totally see that you would have less irritation when coming off those methods. So I actually had a naturopathic doctor, Erin Woolridge, on the podcast a while ago. She was great, and she talked about coming off birth control briefly and how there are things you can do to kind of get your body to prepare. I wasn't fully ready at that time, and I wasn't ready until late last year to actually try stopping the birth control. But yeah, she had a lot of good advice. I would go back and check out that episode if you're interested. And the reason I was afraid is because I had a lot of friends come off it with really bad symptoms, hair loss, really bad acne, weight gain, weight loss, yeah, all sorts of things. So, but those being the main ones. And I found it really hard to find anything online about coming off the NuvaRing specifically. Most people talk about coming off the pill, and that's like the main method, it seems, for a lot of people. I feel like a lot of people now have IUDs, just thinking about my general group of friends. But I think it's all the same when people are making experience videos for coming off of this. I couldn't find anything about NuvaRing, so if anyone is thinking about coming off the NuvaRing, maybe this will apply more so than if you're coming off another method. I really don't know. And relating it back to Newfoundland again, I don't have a family doctor. I haven't for a good number of years. If you don't have a family doctor, you can try 811. Experiences are hit and miss with that. I'll always recommend Planned Parenthood. They're very good for most health issues, specifically pap tests, birth control, STI screening, things like that. I volunteered there for a year, so if you have any questions about that, you can let me know. But yeah, it is really hard to get advice or even get an appointment. Luckily, through my job, we do have access to an online health clinic. But I didn't use that for this. I called 811 when I was thinking about getting off birth control about a year ago. I spoke to 2 different people, and basically I was told that there's nothing you can do to prepare. You just stop it whenever you want. Doesn't matter when you stop it. And you wait 3 months and see where you're at. I was told that by 2 different people. So I'm thinking about my friends who had really bad experiences. And I'm like, there must be a reason that that's happening, which goes back to the naturopathic doctor thing. I recommend anyone looking into that, even though I didn't in this particular situation. And there must be a way to help offset that. So for my own experiences, I was on the pill for a while and then switched to the ring. I was on that for a very long time. I love the convenience of it. If you don't know what it is, you basically insert a ring on like the first day of week 1 when your period's ending, and then you leave it in for 3 weeks. You take it out for a week, then you put a new one in. And I liked this because I only had to think about it twice a month. But also, you could not take it out for that week. You could leave it in for 4 weeks, or you could put a new ring in, and that would delay your period, which I'm a planner, and I've had an agenda every year since I was 12. I plan my life, and the convenience of planning my period was very convenient. So that's what I liked about that. And I started to get bad acne when I was 12, maybe 11, and I didn't get on birth control until I was 14. Or maybe 15, sometime during that year. And as soon as I started it, any acne completely went away. I had 0 issues. If I ever had a pimple, it was like 1, and it was there for 2 days, and I could pop it and it would be gone, and it was no issues. So I was really afraid that when I got off birth control, that would come back, because who wants to go back to having their teenage acne at 29 years old? I certainly didn't. So anyway, I was like, there has to be a way to offset this or to help. And I should say that I was lucky that I didn't have any mental health issues before birth control. I didn't have any issues on it. Now that I think back, I'm like, was I just a hormonal teenager, or did the birth control have something to do with certain emotional moments? I really don't know. But I didn't have any depression or anxiety or anything until adulthood. And yeah, I wouldn't consider that to be related to birth control. So I did find that my weight fluctuated often. I think that was a result of skipping my period so often with the ring. And I had very short periods the whole time I was on birth control before I ever did get on birth control, they were like 5, 6, 7 days. I had to go home from junior high a lot because they were so painful and terrible. And when I got on birth control, that immediately stopped. They were like 3 days. I could tell you the time of day that it was going to start. I could tell you the time of day that it would stop. Zero spotting. There was no issues. So I was afraid that that was going to be reversed as well. So I was afraid of all these things happening. And I downloaded MyFitnessPal, which I used periodically the past like 5-10 years here and there to, at first I was doing it to lose weight, which should not have been doing, because I wasn't looking at the nutrients and things that I was missing. I was only looking at calories, which is not a good way to live. Piece of advice number 1. I later started to track it to make sure I was getting enough carbs and fat and protein and nutrients. I was taking like a multivitamin and things like that. And once I had a good diet down pat and I knew that I was getting enough, I stopped using it completely. So I started using it again about a year ago just to see what nutrients I was getting enough of and what I wasn't getting enough of. And I was also looking into what birth control depletes from your body. And random advice on TikTok and whatnot. That just made sense to me. So from what I found, I started taking magnesium, zinc, D3, and then iron and B12. I'm low iron anyway, and I should be taking the iron pills that were prescribed to me. However, I find I get a bad stomach on them, even if I take them at night, and they're just tedious to take every 2 days. I find it easier to just pop like one of these. These are what I'm talking about, is these here. I just find it easier to take those for some reason. I hate taking pills. I have to take pills with food. So that's just an inconvenience for me to remember to take those. But I found that with the B12 and iron, this one, that was enough. And I didn't find any of the negative side effects of being low iron. I feel like that was enough to kind of offset that. Yeah, so I started taking those. I looked up, you shouldn't take all these at once, first of all, I realized. So I was taking the zinc in the morning. I was taking the D3 with that. I was taking magnesium at night and the iron like in the afternoon or supper time. I think that's what I was doing. I haven't had this strict schedule with it since since a month before I came off birth control. I still do take those regularly for the most part. The D3 I stopped taking throughout the summer. I just didn't feel like I needed it. And the zinc, I will say that throughout the past year, it definitely helped with the bumps and acne that I got, and it definitely helps whenever you get a cold. If you wake up and feel a bit stuffy and you think that you're starting to get sick, take zinc. I have been on the edge of a cold since August, and it never turns into a full-blown cold. I just take zinc and it works. Maybe that's just me, I don't know, but that is definitely the link that I noticed. And if I go like a week without taking zinc, I notice that my acne gets bad. And not even so much acne with me, it's more like bumps. I will get into all of that. And sorry if I'm rambling, there's just so much that I wrote down that I do want to mention. So yeah, and I feel like I'm like giving the results of a science project right now too, because I did track everything. And I used the Clue app to track my cycle. There are a lot of cycle tracking apps that you can use. If I was a rich woman, I would get the Oura ring, which is a ring that like measures your body temperature and plugs it into the app, and it's really accurate at tracking like when you're ovulating and things like that, which is also helpful if you're trying to get pregnant. But I just used the Clue app. I found that was good. At first, I tracked every single symptom. I was taking my temperature every morning. I was tracking like everything, mood, everything. And once I got a handle on it, I just started tracking the more important things. If you don't know, tracking your temperature is a way to track when you ovulate. I'll see if I can put like a screenshot here of the app. Okay, so for those listening, because I'm trying to do video for the first time, and I'm going to see if this works. But basically, you input your temperature every day. But I will show you the app and what that looks like. Let me find one that looks simple. None of these look simple because things have been out of whack. But if you're watching this, I'll show you. If you're listening, basically you can look up what the Clue app looks like. So yeah, based on that screenshot, you can see like the red is when you're on your period, and then the blue days are days that you could get pregnant. One day specifically shows when you're ovulating. So I found that really convenient. But yeah, so I would recommend having one of those that works for you. And I didn't realize that about checking your temperature, that was a thing. And once I was tracking that and I could see the days that I was ovulating, I kind of just stopped tracking that and just started tracking everything else. Another way that I looked at that was the ovary test strips, which are right here. I'm going to talk about that at the end. Something else I just want to add too is that normally, for anyone who might not know, your cycle is normally 28 days. The first day would be the first day of your period, and then it goes until your next one. So normally the day between the first day of your period and the next one is usually 28 days. Everyone's different. I've spoke with people who have cycles that are 38 days. It really depends on the person, but normally it is 28 days and you ovulate between day 12 and 14. So that can vary between everyone as well, which is why it's important to check on it for your own self, because I also read that when you get off birth control, you can ovulate at any time. So you might think that you have a certain safe zone that you don't actually. So yeah, I think that's important to note too. So once I was taking all of the right vitamins and everything, I had a pretty good diet. I was making sure I was getting enough carbs and protein and fat. Fat is also really important for women's reproductive system. So I was really trying to be good with all of that. And once I was on that regimen for about a month or so of taking supplements and vitamins every day, once I finished my period, I just didn't go back on birth control of any kind. I didn't notice much for the first few weeks. I did notice my hair and skin getting oily. That still happens. But when it first happened, I started getting some acne spots. I found my skin was really textured, especially against like my hairline or along my hairline. And if I did this, I could feel bumps like all throughout my scalp. And I had never had anything like this. Like, it is 100% a result of coming off of the ring for sure. So yeah, that was fun. 2 weeks after my period ending is when I started noticing that. And then, yeah, for the next couple of months, it was just really oily skin, oily scalp, and just like texture that came along with that. So that was not fun. Since stopping, my periods have been later than they ever have been. They, on birth control, like a solid 3 days, maybe 4. And now it's like 2 or 3, which is nice. But someone also told me that they experienced that for the first year and then they got bad again. So stay tuned for that. I'm like 10 months out. And I think I mentioned earlier, like, they were really painful, really crampy when I was young before I was ever on anything. And I'm happy that that hasn't returned yet. It's been pretty good. And they used to last like 6 or 7 days. So I'm happy that that didn't return, at least not yet. A big thing I noticed that I was surprised about is my appetite. So I was always someone who had to eat like first thing in the morning. Going to 8 a.m. math at MUN, I would have to get a breakfast sandwich and a coffee because I would be so hungry without. That was always how I was. I was like always hungry. I always needed a late night snack. I always had late night cravings. And I just thought that I had no willpower. Didn't really consider that it was because of birth control, but it totally was. Since stopping, I feel like that has subsided. Most mornings I'm not hungry. I don't eat until 10 or 12, depending on like my schedule for that day, or at least I don't feel like I'm hungry. I do need to remind myself to eat because then I actually end up feeling lightheaded. So it's kind of a cycle. I needed to remember to eat and eat enough while still not having the appetite that I used to have. So that's been an adjustment. And I feel like I get really sluggish if I don't eat in the morning. So I don't need to eat right away when I woke up like I used to. But I definitely have had to be more, I guess I just had to be more careful And another thing with that was I was always bloated during those 15 years, especially if I skipped my period. I found that I was extra bloated. My weight fluctuated a lot for no reason. There would be times where I'd be like really consistent with working out and eating well, and I would just be so bloated. And there would be other times that the opposite was true. So yeah, that was an adjustment as well. I find that I felt better than I have ever felt being off birth control. I just feel, I don't even know how to describe it. Like I feel, it's not more toned because that's not what it is. I just don't feel bloated. I feel a lot more comfortable in my body, which is nice. I've heard of people gaining weight though, so it's very hard to say. And when I say it's different for everyone, I truly mean it. I will say another thing with bloating is that during your luteal phase, so that's after you ovulate until your period, food moves slowly through the body, or slower at that time. And I found that the first few months I was really bloated leading up to my period, which was strange because normally it was during that I would experience that. And yeah, it was just like the week or two before, and I would be so bloated. And after a few months, I kind of realized what was going on. So I find during that time, I have to eat smaller meals. I have to stay away from processed things. And I find that just works better for me. I end up feeling less bloated that way. Sorry if that was a bunch of rambling. Like I said, I just have a lot of thoughts that I want to get out on this. And I hope that it does help some people, or maybe it just plants some seeds in your mind if you're thinking about coming off birth control or you want to look into it. Just different things to look out for. The things I found with skincare, because acne is probably the biggest symptom that I've had aside from like the bloating and all that, which I now have under control. I still do get random pimples. I find I have way more blackheads and whiteheads than I've ever had. My like scalp and all that was only for a couple months, so that did subside. I found that if you have acne on your back, and one of the things that a lot of people said just about like symptoms was not just acne, but random acne. And I, a couple weeks ago, had 2 pimples like right here on my shoulder. Why does that happen? Very unfair, very stupid, very like just very annoying. And I heard of a lot of people saying that like random places, like just everywhere. So anyway, I found that I tried Panoxyl. If I can put a picture of that here, I will. That kind of helped, didn't fully get rid of the problem. I saw that some people on TikTok were using Head and Shoulders because it has zinc in the shampoo, and you use like that directly on your skin, and that actually did work. That cleared up a lot of acne spots that I had on my back and my chest as well, so I would recommend that. And I use pimple patches. I find they're pretty helpful, especially if it's like a whitehead pimple or like a zit that you can pop. Like that usually clears that up and minimizes it. But aside from that, like just having a good skincare regimen, just using a cleanser every night. I don't use a cleanser in the morning. Just a moist, like I wash my face without anything, just water, and then use a moisturizer. Use a cleanser at night. I do use an eye cream with retinol in it. Don't know if that does anything. It's more preventative. I don't think that has anything to do with acne. I've always used a vitamin C serum. I've always had niacinamide. If you have any like red bumps or like irritation on your skin, niacinamide is really good. What else? I try and use sunscreen, but sunscreen is kind of a bad cycle because it makes your skin oily and it makes me have pimples, and then I use the skincare to try and get rid of that, but then I need to put on more sunscreen because I'm going out in the sun. So if anyone knows of a good sunscreen, I use the La Roche-Posay one, the tinted one, which is really good, and I do like the tint to it, but it's still kind of oily. So if anyone has any good sunscreen recommendations that does not clog pores, let me know. Does not clog pores, but is not thick, because I found anyone that people say don't clog pores ends up being like a really thick with like a white cast, which we don't like. So if you've looked into all this for yourself and you are coming off of birth control, you figured out the nutrition and tracking your cycle, 2 things I've found to help ease my mind, because obviously if you are sexually active, pregnancy is a concern for some people. And so I put these two products here. I'm literally just doing this out of my own experience and my own support for this product because I think it's great. Manufactured in Canada, less plastic waste, which is so true. I'll get into that in a minute. Yeah, like quick and easy. So basically, if you use a pregnancy test, for anyone who's ever used one, it's a big thing, like this big clunky piece of plastic. And all you really need in that is the part with the two lines. And then there's digital ones. And I just think that is such a waste. I think it's such a waste of plastic. And anyway, I like to do what I can for the environment. I'm not perfect, but there's no reason to use a regular pregnancy test when these exist. So if there have been times where I take a pregnancy test just to make sure. They also have ovulation tests. So I'll talk about that in a second. Basically, they're both the same. This one is a pregnancy test, but they look exactly the same. And so you literally pee in a cup. You dip this in to like the little blue line. I'll do a close-up for anyone who's watching. That was super blurry. I'll see if I can post a picture. But yeah, basically you dip it in for like 5 to 10 seconds and then it will come up like the two lines here to say pregnant or not. And it's the same with the ovulation tests. So if you come off birth control, and like for me, I was trying to figure out when I ovulate because I didn't know if it was going to be day 12, 13, 14, or maybe like my system was all out of whack after coming off the ring. So the ovulation tests, basically if you're using an app, or you're just tracking your cycle with a calendar and you know when you should be ovulating based on a 28, 29, whatever day cycle, you take one of these tests. This is a pregnancy one, but like I said, the ovulation one is the same. You take an ovulation one the day before you're supposed to ovulate. You take another one the next day at the same time, another one the next day. And you should see, I'll post a picture of the actual test that I have. You should see the line be really faint and then be strong, and then be faint again. And that just kind of validates, or what's the word? Just kind of confirms that you are ovulating, or your body's making the hormones or chemicals that should allow you to ovulate, which was good for me because I would just plug that in the app. And the more, like, basically it's been 10 months that I've been using the app now. And so I can see like each month how long my cycle was. I can see that it was like 29 days, 30 days, 35 days, 27 days. It was really out of whack for those first few months. And then the past, I don't know, since July maybe, like it's basically been back to 28. So now I know for the most part, like the exact day that I am ovulating. Which is helpful because then once you ovulate and those 2 days or so are over, then you should be good until your period if you are sexually active. I say should be. Obviously, everyone's different, so be very careful with your life. But it just kind of gives peace of mind. So I definitely recommend those two products. On the topic of less waste, I also recommend the OB tampons that don't have applicators. They're literally this big. You can pop them anywhere, easy to carry around. You can buy a box of like 40 of them. It's something I literally don't think of. I have a stash and I rarely even need them now because my periods are so light and short. But anyway, I was looking into a Diva cup kind of thing as well. I did buy one, but my periods just haven't been heavy enough to use one. Let me know if any of you have experiences with that, because I do think that that's a good product too, especially with all of the chemicals that they're finding in tampons these days, apparently. It's kind of scary. So I like using the tampons with the least amount of material and packaging as possible. If not for me, then for the environment. And what else? I think that's everything. I really just wanted to, like I said, just talk about a couple things that I wish I had known and that I know now, and I feel very in control of my own health and reproductive system. And if I ever want to have kids, I'll be able to conceive and I will know the exact date that everything happened. And if you're someone who's trying to get pregnant, I feel like all of this is very helpful information as well too. I hope that sex ed has advanced along with other things that we've come to know today. I feel like none of this was common knowledge when I was in high school, when I got on birth control to begin with. So hopefully this is some new information, or hopefully it makes you a bit more informed. I was going to do a summer recap, but this episode is long enough already. So I'll leave it there. I feel like I need to do an episode about turning 30 and the crazy year that this has been. I might need a few episodes to do that. So I'll leave it at that for now. But yeah, tune in next time. I usually do this bi-weekly. I took a very large break over the summer because I was just way too busy. But I like doing this for fun. And if anyone wants to come on and have a chat or share experiences or have any questions or feedback, you can DM me. It is at Newfound Happy Hour on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Spotify, and hopefully YouTube. I am filming this in a video, so I'm really hoping that I can figure out a way to do that easily without taking too much time to edit. So yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great weekend.